Hi guys, thank you for joining. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes until we get a few more people on the call, and then we will start with the meeting. So we'll probably look to start at 12:01, 12:02. I can see numbers are creeping up, so we'll give it a couple of minutes and we'll get started. I think Manraj is in the attendees. I've just promoted him to a panelist, and then we should be able to get started. I think we've got about 30 of us in, and I think numbers will gradually creep up. So you have to start, Josh? Should we start? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Manraj is on now. So yeah, two parts. They're all good.
All right then guys, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you all for joining. This is our first event for Sikhs in banking and financial services. My name is Manraj. We've got two Manrajes on the call. You can call me Junior. We've got Senior that is on the panelist. Look, I've been in banking and financial services for the last 6 years, involved in various different projects, networks, initiatives, and this is one of them. Sikhs in banking and finance, its sole aim and purpose is to educate, encourage and promote Sikhs in banking and financial services. And this panel event is one way of doing it. So I won't take up too much more of your time. I know you're here to hear the panelists and not me, but what I will do is pass over to Taran and Jajad, and they will introduce the panelists and we can get rolling with the event.
Hi, I'm Taran, so I'm an investment analyst and I enjoy networking, and I'm going to be working with Sikhs in banking and finance to start up a book club and mentor scheme. I'll pass it over to Jajad Singh now.
Thank you, Manraj and Taran, and hello everyone. Really pleased to be here and today just for our first event on Sikhs in banking and finance. Really excited to have a esteemed panel of guests with us today. Paramjit, Matharu, Amrit and Manraj, who I'll introduce in a moment. So myself, I have been in banking for about the last 15 years in various roles within risk, finance and audit. Started off in RBS, NatWest, and then moved on to UBS, and then now I'm in HSBC, where I'm the co-chair of the Sikh network. We collaborate and work with many other Sikh networks, but also other employee resource groups within the bank and also externally to promote diversity and inclusion. I was also the co-founder with Amrit, who's on the call, of the RBS Sikh network, which has grown over the last sort of 5 years in RBS. So really pleased to have you all here. So in terms of just today, I'll be introducing panelists in a moment. But one of the things which Taran mentioned is a sort of a longer term aim for this group is to sort of try and have a sort of mentoring solution for students, but also people trying to progress in their career. We do have a Q&A function today. So if you do have any questions for the panelists, please pop them in the Q&A and we can try and answer them towards the end of the session. And the session is being recorded and will be shared afterwards, after the call. What I wanted to say in terms of, we did go out with a survey when we launched this event with areas that you wanted to sort of focus in on. So I think the areas that we're going to sort of focus in on, taking the feedback from that survey, was things like career progression, balancing your faith, so Sikhi and at work, and also work-life balance with families. So without further ado, I will introduce our panelists today. So we have Banjit Matharu, who is a managing director at JP Morgan Chase and is a global head of indirect tax, as well as head of tax for the EMEA region. We also have Manraj Othi, who is he currently works for Starbucks, heading up the finance transformation and data analytics across Europe. But I think you've got a new role, so you can maybe talk about that in a little bit. And we also have Amrit Bhaiya, who was also co-founder with myself at RBS for the Seek network, but he's had over 30 years of experience within the financial services, doing various roles within that West. So without further ado, I will come to Paramjit first and ask the first question. So how has your Sikh faith influenced the approach to leadership in the finance industry?
I think, you know, Sikhi is in your blood. It's who you are. It's your core values. And I arrived in the UK at the age of 18, thinking I was going to go to university. I was going to do ophthalmic optics. Life intervened. We had a tragedy in the family, and I ended up going to the job centre. And would you believe, got interviewed for a job with HMRC as an assistant officer. I didn't have a clue what I was getting into, and I think over that period, I stayed 6 years with HMRC and then did 9 years with Pricewaterhouse, and now in my 27th year at JP Morgan. The constant in my life has been Sikhi. So through these years, I got married, have an extended family, now have a grandchild and another one on the way. So I think the biggest thing for me has been the integrity and perhaps the fearlessness that our faith teaches us, you know, nirpo, nirvar. You start life with, I have a conscience, I have a soul, I'm going to live in the moment. You know, the core values that Sikhi teaches you, give the Ganniya, and you're going to do it with integrity. So I think starting at a very, very junior level in all of these organizations and then rising through the ranks, I've kind of tried to be true to the, I was saying, I'm learning, I'm going to learn, I'm going to keep my mind open. You engage, so there is no which needs you. You know, I haven't really worried about who I'm speaking to. I try and speak with the same demeanor. That served me well. It's opened doors. So I think for me, the probably the biggest part of this has been not to get phased. So every time I felt nervous, you know, I haven't gone to university. I'm not, you know, savvy. I don't have the same general knowledge as the people I've been. So I came from quite a sort of a vulnerable position to feeling, well, so what? You know, so I'm here, I'm going to do this job and I'll learn it the best I can. And I think that really does come from, you know, do your Japji Sahib and you get those values. So that's probably the biggest thing for me. But I'm sure the others have similar stories. So I don't know, Amrit, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, amazing. Maybe Amrit or Manraj, would you like to build upon that?
I mean, I'll have a go. I mean, when I joined the bank, it seems like a lifetime ago. It was 1991 up north. So I'm from Leeds originally, and I was the only Sikh there. You know, I didn't see anybody else that looked like me for a number of years. And to be honest, it was only when I came down south to London in 1999 that I saw, actually, you know, there are quite a few of us. You know, the old saying about why blend in when you were born to be different. You know, I've always taken that adage, right? Because you can do one of two things. You can either be different and think, whoa, you know, this is not for me, and you kind of just flow to the background, or you can stand up and actually use it to your advantage. And that's what I think I've learned to do. And if you're a bag, right, you're noticeable, aren't you? You know, if you're a Munna, not taking anything away, but you can't always tell whether somebody's Muslim, Hindu, Sikh. But when you're a bag, you stand out so much. And I always say, you know, it's like a lighthouse, right? We're a beacon. We should stand up, be proud, and show others the way to do things. So, you know, being Yorkshireman, I've never let it face me anyway, right? It's in my blood. So, yeah, the faith also is helpful when you'll have low times in the bank, especially if you've been there quite a while. You'll have highlights, and I think for us, it's in our blood to lean on our faith when we have hard times. And I used to say this to Jajar. You may remember that. After a while, you learn never to worry about anything because everything always works out, right? You know, if you have the faith, you will always find a route. If you don't know something, you'll always find someone that knows the answer to something. And I've learned over time is never to get faith, never worry. Everything always works out. So Manraj, I don't know whether you've got anything to add above and beyond that.
I should try my best. I think for me, it's the values that resonate. And I think at the point of when I entered the world of work, it was the shift in corporate culture. So it was very much the businesses were trying to align with values such as like integrity, and then to bring it full self to work, your identity, as well as resilience as being a core part of probably my journey along the way. And those values that come through have very much just been so helpful to be able to support me in my decision making and very hard times as well. And I think when you build a community of others who follow the same principles and values, I think that's also important. So your sangat as to who you find. And I think I've been quite fortunate to meet many on this call through that sangat in the corporate environment to give you that confidence that you are on the right path by just trying to do what's right, as opposed to what others may be necessarily trying to take you towards, which might be what suits their needs. So I think that the values and principles have very much been a core of who I am, what Sikhi teaches us, and then also a fortunate timing of aligning with where business values are trying to go, because it's the right thing to do now, I think.
Yeah, amazing. Just to build on that, so is there any strategies that you found effective for leveraging your career and achieving your professional goals? Amrit, I'll come to you on that one.
Sorry, did you say that again? Have I?
So is there any strategies that you found effective for leveraging your career and achieving your professional goals?
So I've always known my value, right? And I've never been ashamed or shy to shout about it. So my strategy is dead clear. If you see something and you want to have a go ask for it. Yeah, I think I wrote in my LinkedIn that I've been in the bank, it's going to be 32 years in September. In 32 years, I've only ever had one interview. Right? And beyond that, I've always grabbed roles. I always remember when I first came down to London, you know how your day one in any job is just being introduced to people and meeting people. And on my way home, somebody stopped me and said, oh, let me just show you to one of the senior managers. So I went in and shook hands. I was about to leave and he said to me, Amrit, why don't you come with me tomorrow morning? I'm going to a meeting to do with the Competition Commission. And I remember it as it was yesterday because something twigged in my brain and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do a bit of research. I know nothing about this, just in case, even though I'm just supposed to be sitting there and watching. So I sat there and I watched and I listened and I learned a few things about it. And the following morning, I went to this meeting, massive marble building, went into this boardroom. They're all male, pale and stale. And I sat down and I grabbed a chair thinking, oh, my senior's coming, so I'll save this for him. He didn't turn up. So I was sat there for 3 hours being bombarded with questions, but I managed it professionally. Now, the lesson there wasn't there and then. It was 2 years later when somebody said to me, I want you to come and work for me. He goes, you won't remember me, but I was in that meeting and I saw the way you handled yourself and I've been watching you from afar and I want you to come and work for me and do this role. So one of my strategies is that I treat every single meeting as an interview because you never know, right? And not just internal, but external as well. And that was my springboard because from then on, for many, many years, people kept saying, all right, his reputation is this, that, and the other. So I want him to work on this project or that project. So I would just get picked. So I would always say, treat every single meeting you have as an interview, right? Because you never know what might come off it or come beyond it.
Yeah.
I've got to share a little story which ties in with yours actually, because I did the one interview too, just the one with HMRC, which I was 19 years old and didn't really know what I was asking for, but anyway, landed in HMRC. But from that point on, as you say, it's how you conduct yourself. And a lot of people used to say to me, you look young, but you don't sound that young, and you seem to be very assured in what you're doing. So I think in every meeting, I kind of forgot that I was new. I just tackled the job, lived in the moment. And that saw me through a couple of promotions at HMRC. But then I got headhunted to go into Pricewaterhouse, and that was quite unusual for that point in time. It was early days. They were just starting to recruit for indirect tax practice, and it was kind of word of mouth. And from that point on, the next one was also a headhunting into the banking space. And it's partly because I've always felt that whichever meeting you go into, you don't just focus on the question you want to ask, you listen. And when you listen, then you're participating and then you're responding. So one of the techniques that I didn't know I was doing this, but it's been one of the things that people have told me that they value, that it doesn't matter if it's a topic that I'm a subject matter expert in or not. If I'm going into a meeting with the CFO, I'll be talking about things that matter to the CFO, because you're kind of listening at what they want to hear. So one of the strategies is, as you go through your career, there are things that you think you need to know and you want to know, but there are things that people have that they're going to tell you. So you have to listen carefully. And if you listen to what people are trying to tell you, it starts to come together. Your strategy starts to develop. So one of the things that I found is in doesn't matter where you are in your career path, if you're being attentive and you're living in the moment, you will make better value out of that meeting. And from that, as you say, people are watching. People get a lot of comfort from how you conduct yourself. So if you go in very diffident and I'm the quiet one, I'm not listening, I'm going to do what I'm told, that doesn't leave an impression. But whereas if you're engaged, asking questions, you may not always know the answers, you may not give the right answers, but you will leave an impact. And I think that's generally a good strategy.
The other bolt-on I'll have, and I know both Manraj and Paramjit are excellent at this, is the whole networking piece, right? Because again, so when I first came to London, one bit of advice I was given, I've never forgotten it, was my boss saying to me, don't stay sat on your bottom, go up and get around and start meeting people. And the one skill that I kind of fine-tune is my networking. You know, I know everyone that needs to be known in the bank and beyond this as well. And it's those networks that will support you in the future. And when you need them, it's those networks that you will rely upon as well. External as well. You know, I go to events. I went to an event at the Supreme Court a month ago. Somebody came up to me and went, "Oh, it's you, the LinkedIn guy." Now, you know, I'm not one of these people that post loads of stuff, but when I do, I try and make it thoughtful and meaningful. So, you know, don't stay sat on your bottom. It's the advice I was given. It's the advice I'll give you to the audience here as well. Meet people, talk to people. I think it's much harder post-pandemic. You know, pre-pandemic, wherever I sat, I always had an empty chair next to my desk. I used to call it my therapy chair. And it was an invitation for people to come down and sit down and just chat to me about what's going on in their lives, you know, in the business. And what a great way to collect intel as well, you know, so you know everything that's going on. And I do think it's become much harder to do this, you know, post-pandemic, especially when we're working from home.
Definitely, I think I resonate with that in terms of. So I worked in audit for a number of years, and a manager once gave me some advice, and he said, you know, talk to your stakeholders when you don't need them. Because when you don't need them and you have that interaction, that you build that relationship with them, and then when you do need them, if you're landing issues or whatever you're doing, it's much easier to have those difficult conversations when you have those networks. So no, thank you for sharing those.
I just add a little bit, which I'm not as fortunate in having only had one interview in my career so far, but I've only actively sought one role. I think otherwise it's been approached, headhunted, however you want to call it, across my journey, which has been a great position to be in. But I think that ties into the mindset, which is anything that leaves my inbox, any kind of work, I see as that's my reputation going out or leaving. So always just thinking about in that sense that your reputation, the integrity of your work and quality is core to an extent, so that will form the brand, the perception that is around you. And it might be whether it might be the work I was doing in building up the Sikkim networks at EY, KPMG otherwise, in the charity space with Carl's Aid and others. But in terms of the core work I'm delivering in transformation, finance, and now in data science, everything that goes out forms your aura, your perception in the environment that then individuals will feel comfort around. So, you know, to Amrit's point, that when people come to you, it doesn't matter whether you're actually the right person, because technically for that sort of job, but the core aptitude you have there and what you will deliver in terms of the quality of work is what they'll see, I suppose. So there's that piece, but also I think I personally have looked. I think careers are like it's a mountain, right? And there's always a different peak. When you get past one area, there's some clouds, and there's a whole new world that you never knew existed hiding behind there. And you find new roles that you never knew existed. But trying to proactively look across and see what jobs and roles that might be around, individuals that I might look up to, and try and see what are the types of experiences I might want to get under my belt in the next few years. And therefore, when opportunities come along, it makes it very easy for me to say yes or no. Because if it doesn't enable me to get to that next layer, then it's a no. And it's, that training, development, upskill, remuneration is part of it, but it's longer term. Sometimes you can get remuneration, which might seem quite a jump in a short term, but actually longer term, it might not be the right move. I think having a bit of a longer term view about where you want to be in a few years, so you're unpicking the skills that to make your decision making a bit easier about what roles you say yes or no to, I think is helpful as well.
Thank you for sharing those. I'm going to come to Paramjit for the next question. I know you've got, obviously, you through your career, you've obviously had a family and children and grandchildren, I think, if I'm not wrong. So I was, in terms of demands of your professional life and balancing that with your personal life and responsibilities and Sikhi, and also as a female, would you be able to just share some thoughts on that and how those experiences have been? Because I know you've got a wealth of experience in that.
I'll try and keep it short. I suppose it's been my life mission, actually. So I got married relatively young, but I had a journey before I could have the kids. And during that time, I was at HMRC, and in a way, I wasn't career ambitious at the time. I kind of had the little bump of not going to uni, then getting into HMRC, then got married. So the next logical thing, considering the age I am and the generation I belong to, it seemed like, okay, family will come, we'll see what happens. Well, family didn't come that easy. And so I started to get a little bit more kind of ambitious with work. So the Pricewaterhouse job interviews, I mean, bearing in mind that I grew up in Kenya in a relatively cocooned, sheltered way, finding my way into the city not that long after I'd emigrated here to go for a consultancy role in Pricewaterhouse was a big deal, very intimidating. And so went through pretty grueling interview processes, and they didn't call them interviews, it was just meet so-and-so, meet so-and-so. And in the middle of all of that, I was also going through medical assessments. And the day I got the job offer from Pricewaterhouse, I also got the letter from the hospital around roadworks ahead. So I turned the job down, and I got called by the senior partner saying, what happened? Why have you turned it down? And I said, well, I do want to have a family. I mean, this is, I'm talking about 1986. So I was honest and said to them, I really want a family. It actually doesn't feel fair now that I know what my next step is on that particular side of things. So it doesn't feel fair that I take this job. And he said, well, we're ready to take a punt on you if you are. And that kind of started my story. I went on to have very serious roadworks for 2 years before my first son was born. And so I said to them, I want to take the 7 months or so of maternity leave, but I would have to come back to work. Financially, we weren't going to be able to manage. The story continued. I then had twins 2 years later, and it was a very difficult, for those of you you can't see, but I'm 4'9" 3/4", rapidly shrinking. Not built to carry twins, not an easy health journey. I had very open conversations with my managers, which meant that the flexibility I needed to work, throughout all that time, I still carried all my portfolio of clients. I was actually on partner track by this stage. So it was a very fast career. So we're talking now, by this stage, my twins were born in 1991. So between 1986 and 1991, I've gone from being first year junior to being on partner track and being on my second pregnancy. And so the story that I kind of picked up from the learning that I picked up from this was honesty is the best policy. Tell them what you're dealing with, offer some solutions on how you're going to work it. And these were the days before BlackBerry and laptops, right? So I did genuinely carry 2 briefcases around, and it worked. I then sort of had, once I had the twins and they were premature, they were 31-week babies and I was fragile medically. So I resigned thinking this isn't going to work. I've got to try and concentrate on my health. 14 months later, I went back because I needed to. They took me back a grade lower than I'd left. And I had to kind of really juggle the hours. So I know people have questions around how do you manage your hours? I set my stall out and I was very clear with them. These are the hours I'll be in the office. I'm doing a full-time job. I will do the other hours. You will get your delivery, but it's going to be on my timeline. So I'm giving you my very specific example. But the point is, know what you want, know what you don't want. And that's what I applied. So broadly, when the children were younger, it was all about the hours and how do I manage to deliver to the clients? How do I manage to make the meetings? Mobile phones came a long time later. How do I keep in touch with schools, the caring, and I didn't have in-family care. So I went with initially an excellent nanny who took all my salary but gave me the security because I still needed to earn the money. And then very, very good childminders and generally people I trusted. So I think, how do you balance this? You have to be in the moment. So when I was at work, I accepted that this is, when I'm here, I'm going to give this the best shot. With my children, they are going to have homemade roti. We are going to have nitnem together in the morning. My children are going to wear their turbans. I will make the effort to find a way to get their hair done in a way so they can wear their cricket helmets. The journey is being clear in your mind what you want. And if you want that, then you've got to make it work. And the best policy is to actually ask. And I didn't so far in all these 30 odd years, my boys are now 33 and 31. We went through this journey with all of them. I went to school assemblies. I did support them when my oldest was bullied for a little while for having a patka. And the only way to manage this is to be upfront about who you are, be proud of your identity, and then ask for what you want. So I think in the job that I'm in now, I have a very large team, and I use this principle. Every person is different. We've all got different needs. Somebody's caring for someone, somebody's got dependents, other people have got other limitations or not limitations, they want to do other things. And so I think the lesson, both for my children and for people who work with me and for myself, I use the same bar. Life is to be lived, and your life outside of work is really important. So don't underplay it. Don't bore people with it, but put your stall out and say, these are the things that really matter to me. So when I'm juggling, this is why I'm juggling. When I'm here, I'm 100% here. And in between, frankly, they value your input and you also become very loyal, because if the companies start to accommodate your requests, you're going to be 10 times better at doing what you want because you're going to honor that promise. So long answer, Jujar, but I think the secret has been, for me, being open about what I want, thinking about what I absolutely don't want. So, for instance, I don't do evening network so much. So my circuit is usually a daytime circuit. So if I couldn't go to the tax practitioners groups because they were all drinking clubs in the evening, I just called it out and said, guys, I'm a mother of 3. I'm not going to come to that. But instead, how about doing coffee with me? So my coffees and lunches became quite popular. And so it was almost setting up my own network to do what I wanted. But the rationale was also very clear. I did make it very clear to them, okay, I'm a woman. I have to go home. I do need to go and look after my kids. And by the way, I'm proud. I cook in the evenings. I'm going to tell you, I have a dinner to cook. So I never hid that. And people start to respect that. So sorry, I've taken a long time to answer your question, but hopefully that helps.
I was saying in my post, Paramjeet, that I was looking forward to hearing this story for so long on LinkedIn. I was telling everyone, because it is very inspiring, being a mum of 3 and having your face at the top of a recognized sort of company it's not an easy job. That's sort of, quite a few full-time jobs simultaneously that you've been doing, and it is tireless. And I guess that leads me on to the next question to Amrit and Manraj. Is sort of, I know Paramjeet spoke about long hours, meetings, setting boundaries. You guys are family men, you're married. I know Manraj, we were speaking a couple of weeks ago, you were saying you were in hotels, you found it difficult, obviously managing that as well. How have you sort of dealt by setting those boundaries with families? How have you sort of, got through family and work-life balance and faced those challenges? I know Amrit, so just very quickly, you said therapy chair. I was just sitting in the office and Ada Gordy comes over to me and she was just crying about this, that, the other. Now I felt like I took all of her pain on me. I'm feeling drained. So how have you done it? How do you listen to everyone's dog sock and go home, put on that face, brave face for the family and the kids? And how do you do it really, I guess is the question.
The first part you're asking about family life, so let me just build on what Paramjit said, because balancing work and children isn't just a mother thing, right? So fathers have a key role to play here as well. When I look at my upbringing, so I was born to the first generation of parents that came from India that had no money, couldn't speak the language. Most of you have been there as well, right? So I was first generation born here. I had a thirst for knowledge, but we didn't have the guidance. We couldn't even afford books. So when my children were born, I really wanted to make sure that we didn't make that same mistake again, because you get one chance to nurture your children properly, right? So for me, there was this switch in my brain which flipped, and it was, right, work is now going to become my hobby, and nurturing my children is going to become my job, right? Now you can do that without sacrificing job. I think, if I'm being honest, I probably sacrificed a bit of career ambition, but I don't care, right? Because like I said, with your children, you only get one go. You either mess it up or you do it right. And I couldn't afford private schools. So a lot of it was self-nurturing, teaching. I would at 4 o'clock on the dot do an audio call with the children, do their spelling tests and do their times tables, and make sure there was something every single day. When I got home, I made sure I had time for a chat about what was going on in the world. I look now, and my son graduated 5 years ago. He's got a master's degree from Cambridge. My daughter she finished her master's in biochemistry, 2 weeks ago at Oxford. So I've had one go to each. And now I feel, you know what, I made the right decision, because you can't go back and change it once it's done. So it's a balance for both mother and father, in this, if you want to be part of the journey as well. And the other thing about taking other people's duck suck, I don't look at it as duck suck, right? I'm a people's person. I enjoy listening to people, and the point that Jujar made about make sure you talk to your network when you don't need them as well is really, really key. I work from home most of the time, but when I go into London, into the office, I make sure that it's just to network and catch up with people. And with all my seniors that I worked with 10, 20, 30 years ago, I still keep in touch with them. And most of them are CEOs of different buildings across various organizations. I think you need to have a genuine interest. I don't think you can fake it. You've got to have a warm tenacity as well when you're going about doing your business. So, and it comes with practice, because I was actually quite introverted growing up, right? That confidence, it just comes with time, and the more you do it, and the more natural it becomes as well.
I'll come in from a different perspective, as in that I don't have little ones yet, but I've just recently got married. But the mindset I've had around the balance, having heard from other more experienced individuals in the past, is been, how do I want to live? And that's been a driver towards the decisions for the types of roles and the work, and also previously around the experience. What am I working towards to have this balance? I don't think it happens overnight on its own. To an extent, it's in my mind by design, and that's kind of, and little conscious choices, as you mentioned, around the Coachella piece. When I was in consulting, if I've actively chosen, my wife is a ex-manager consultant as well. We both decided that we wouldn't want to go back into consulting, because with various types of consultancies, which might involve lots of travel and spending time in hotels away from each other at this point in time, because we want to spend time with each other, and in the future also with children. Also, there's little small decisions that have an impact as to where and when you might want to work, to how you want to live, I suppose. So that's been a principle, I guess, in terms of work-life balance. Proximity as well. I always had the dream that when I used to live across a 15-minute walk from B Sky B, was like, this is the place. This is, when I finish off getting the experience I want, I'll have a 15-minute walk in the morning, we'd be home in the evening, and then spend time with the kids, etc. When I have the kids and living there. But that was the design, as to finding somewhere that's an office that I'll be close to, experience, salary, remuneration, all those types of things, right? So it's those things in the back of my mind, which I'm probably trying to build up the experience to get to the balance that Paramjit and Amrit have at the moment.
I'll take one of the questions, Manraj, that I saw come up. I thought I'd take it live rather than type a long answer. Ranjit Singh is asking, how do you know what you want at a very young age? It's hard to know what the parameters are. I think that goes back to the Sikhi values, maybe, because the things that I decided very early on, I mean, just going back to my story, I was always the only female in a very large group of white men, and they usually went to the pub on a Friday afternoon. Not my game. I made that very clear day one. And, they never then pressurized me. As I said, the evenings, I didn't want to be out. I made it clear that I wasn't going to do that. It's not like it was black and white. It's not like I don't attend the odd social gathering in the evenings or whatever, but it wasn't going to be, curry night every week. That just wasn't me. So those were the simple things. Then I think the rest of it is kind of your code of conduct for yourself. So I knew that I wanted, as Amrit was saying, the career isn't the be all and end all. The career happened because you just did your job well and people spotted you, opportunities came. I never started this journey thinking I want to be head of this or not. It was more, I really need to make sure I keep this job working because I need to get home and be able to pay for this and make sure the kids are catered for, etc., etc. So I think so the things that I wouldn't do became very much part of how I set the code of conduct for myself, because I definitely wanted to make sure that my children saw role models both in me and my husband. So just a little throwaway here, and acknowledging Amrit's comment about the balance. The wheel of life is all about balance. And after the twins, my husband was in the tech sector, and the tech bubble burst in the early 90s, as most of you know. And so there I was thinking, 3 kids, done. I'm going to enjoy having these kids who I've gone through such medical hurdles for. Fate decided otherwise. He needed to come back to work because he was out of work. And 3 kids and a mortgage, you're not going to cope. We had a huge conversation, my husband and I. And he was like, okay, look, you're fragile health-wise. So this job of yours, you can exercise your skill set and probably get better value than I will, because the way the industry went. We had that very grown-up conversation that I could do certain things and he could do certain things, and the partnering wouldn't be where I am, not career-wise and not really as a person, if he wasn't there as my conscience all the time. And Charles met my husband, he's definitely got a view on things. And so I think having strong partners, and if you don't have if you're not married or you don't have a partner, I think having strong family support, strong friends who are going to keep you honest and give you that shoulder to lean on when you want it. So nobody makes it alone. You have to lean on your circle, but your circle and your sangat is really important. So that's where having the network of personal strength is also really important. Sorry, Ranjit, long answer to your question.
No, thank you for sharing. That's really inspiring. Next question I wanted to sort of touch on is, facing challenges and setbacks. So, Manraj, maybe I'll come to you first. And how do you maintain a positive outlook and stay motivated? When you face challenges or potential setbacks?
I will refer to a period which is probably the most challenging I had in my personal career, and I think it was a toxic environment, very stressful, and I think Sikhi definitely came to the fore in terms of the values and what was right and what was wrong in that situation, which gave me the strength to know that I was on maybe the right path or the right side of what to do. And I think Sangat was also very important. So more experienced individuals around me to give me perspective and guidance, and also be, to Paramjit's point, your network being there to support you. It's not always just, I guess, in the family space, but also in the work environment, that you have individuals to talk to and feel comfortable to open up and get their perspective, because the chances are lots of other people have been in the same situation you've been in beforehand, and there's a perspective. And when you're quite early on in your career, it's quite daunting being faced with some of these challenges that come at you from you've got no experience in how to navigate it. So I think looking to others around you for perspective and guidance. Sikhi has so much perspective on whether it's Sakya or it's in terms of just purely the values and principles we adhere to, that it gives you perspective as to how you should go about it when you're sometimes not so clear and it's quite murky in the situation. So I think that, and I generally find running helps a lot as well. So I exercise, just clearing my head or going for long walks. It just clearing your head sometimes when you're in the midst of something, taking a step away or removing yourself from a situation. Those have been my, outside of stress eating, have been my tools probably to combat those difficult situations.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. How about you, Amrit? Any yourself?
I have a very different lens on this, okay? I look back at my father who worked in a factory shoveling hot molten steel for 20 odd years. And that's hard work, right? And that's stress when you have to try and work all those silly hours, night shifts included, to put food on the table. In comparison, what we do, right, it ain't that bad, right? We get busy at times and your boss might be a bit, a bit narky. I don't take it home, I mean, I might work late hours, but once I've logged off, it's there until the following morning. So I try not to stress about stuff. I've got my own little releases. I'm a bit of a movie buff, right? So I will switch off and go watch a film and be totally engrossed in it and forget about the world. I try and do some extracurricular stuff, as most of you guys know. Manraj, you supported me a few years ago. I run these career events for students, which I've been doing since 2018. Doing the next one in October. We had 10,000 students who, we had 10,000 student touch points with the last event. For me now, it's all about giving, right? I'm going to be okay. Like I said to you before, you never worry about stuff. Everything always works out. However many years I've got left, I know I'm going to be okay, right? So I'm never going to stress about it. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And for me, it's all about giving back to the next generation as well. So, extracurricular activities, find what takes you away from the day job. Just don't worry about it. I've had one philosophy in life is that know your value, right? But I never take no for an answer in anything unless they threaten you with handcuffs or a straitjacket, right? Assume you can find a way of doing something that you want to do that makes you happy. Yeah.
One bit that, just to build on Amrit's point, I actually probably should have mentioned is a lot of what helped a lot was Seva, because helping another individual is probably the greatest gift you can give to, because you benefit more than that person by helping them, I generally find. And whether it was, we used to organize weekly outreach with SWAT, or when I used to go on missions with Khals Aid. So let's say I was in Northern Iraq with the Yazidi community a few times, and perspective of that type of resilience in those situations gives you so much perspective as to realize life is not all so bad. So whatever you're facing, to Roman's point, it gives you perspective as to things are far worse elsewhere, and you've got individuals there, big smiles on their faces, overcoming them. So actually, Seva in terms of helping, but also just gaining that perspective, which is probably a huge enabler in my journey of not being phased, I suppose, by some of these things, or getting a bit more a perspective on the scale of issues in the world compared to what you're dealing with. And I think that's important to just go out and put yourself in the midst of difficulty or dealing with some of these situations, so you don't become too much in a bubble, I suppose, is an important piece.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And Brahmjit?
I was reflecting which story I was going to share. I think at a personal level, I've had 3 near fatal medical incidents, which are hugely actually strengthening, because when you approach life with this may not be forever, you wake up every morning with a smile, actually, because it's a gift. And so I think in that sense, Charity Kala is a great place to be. I got really tested on this. So putting my big comment on the side, about a decade ago, there was an incident at the workplace where, as a senior manager, I was having to deal with a situation where I was going to have to go down a course of action for this individual, who really then played very dirty. It resulted in a magic circle inquiry into my conduct. I can tell you that's not a picnic. It really wasn't fun at all. And no matter how much experience, no matter how much I knew, I was going to be fine. I knew there was nothing but to go through that process. And you can understand that, the careers that we're in, the professions we're in, your integrity and your reputation is kind of key, right? You need to hang on to that. Plus, you need to keep functioning through something like that. And it all worked out fine. But I can tell you, it was one of the most unpleasant chapters of my life. And there were moments then when I thought to myself, why am I doing this? Why don't I just give up? I don't need this headache, let it go. And that's something you do. I mean, in these careers, there are times when you've got to pick, am I going to fight this battle? Am I going to back off? Is it worth it? And I honestly feel that we always pray, right? We always ask for things, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously. We're always asking the Almighty, the Divine, or whatever it is that we're thinking about. But you're always saying, let this happen. And for me, in those days, it was, I want truth. I want truth here. I don't want all this nonsense that's being spoken about. So I had a lot of energy and almost a crusader style. I'm going to get the facts on the table. It kept me going. You have to find your energy somewhere, because you can't be a passive player. So sometimes people say, we talk about Sikhi. Sikhi is not passive. Sikhi is active. And in times of stress, you have to find the strength through, for me, it was Jantu mere wal hai, tak kya chanta. I'm going to do this because I know it'll be okay. But that doesn't mean that you don't feel vulnerable. You haven't got that conscious. Nothing's ever black and white, and you could be put into a position where somebody doesn't believe you, right? So you've got to find the strength. So for me, I think in all of this, don't take yourself too seriously, and roll with the punches. But through it all, keep your faith. Keep your faith that if you do right, it'll come right. I think those were my experiences.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I think we're coming up to quarter to, or we're just past quarter to the hour. Maybe we'll take some questions from attendees. Manraj, do you want to take some of those?
Yeah, definitely. I was getting a few messages in between from attendees, sort of saying they want a part 2. They want it to be longer. They want to sort of do a keynote event in person. So it's very good. It's good to get that feedback during the event. I thought I'd just share it with you guys as well on there. But look, one of the questions that have come through to the chat, it's for Amrit. So, what is the most challenging period you have experienced at work, and how have you coped with it?
I mean, notwithstanding what I said a few minutes ago about, things don't stress me out, I think the most irksome period was, and other banks have been through it subsequently, so I sympathise, is we had a systems outage back in 2012. I don't know if you were there, Chajar, whether you remember it, but we lost our system, the payments couldn't be made, and there was all sorts going on for at least a couple of weeks. And I used to be head of internal communication for the whole division. And I was just about to move into a new job into strategy, and I got called back to coordinate everything, because I knew the bank, right? I knew how things worked, I knew how systems worked, I knew how to write as well. And I was literally working through the night, night after night after night. I remember one evening, I woke up, and I was in a train, and I went through a tunnel, and I woke up scared, because I couldn't remember if I was going home or going to work. It was that kind of period as well. And I remember being sat in the office on a Sunday evening, and emails was just flying in, and there were so many that I couldn't cope, and I froze for a minute, thinking, what am I going to do here? But then you compose yourself, right? Because you can only do what you can do. And again, I don't get stressed, right? As long as you do your best in anything you can do. I always have it in my head, we're a warrior race, right? So give everything a go. If things stress you out, talk to somebody about it, get it off your chest, share your feelings, unburden yourself, right? And just move forward and move on. Yeah, so that was challenging work-wise, but apart from that, I've enjoyed every single day. I've done a different job every, I would say, a maximum of 3 years. So in a 32-year career, I've done credit, risk, finance, strategy, internal comms, lots of strategic projects and so forth. I enjoy the adventure of trying something new. It's not even a case of move on before you found out. I take my learnings and just try and get a lot of variety around this kind of stuff. So challenge is part of the buzz. It kind of makes my adrenaline. I perform better when it's under pressure or something's gone a bit cuckoo. It'd be boring if it was all straightforward, right?
Yeah, no, it's good. Totally agree. Manraj, this one's probably good for you. Someone's put in the chat recently, someone asked me, where would you like to be 5 years from now? So how would you suggest developing a career plan or a plan from 5 years from now? And I'll hand it over to Amrit and Balamji after as well if they want to add on to it as well. So
it's so personal to individuals, because it's not just about career. I think it's more holistic about where do you want to be and how do you want to live, I think. So then trying to take into, I always have this matrix of the various aspects you look for in a career and a role. I know that, you know, your learning, your development, there's jobs, you know, job satisfaction, and it kind of is the overall intention. Do you waking up? Do I enjoy waking up every day, open my laptop, and then close the end of the day? Do I feel satisfaction? Am I an impact? Am I learning? Am I growing? And all those kind of then thinking forward to what skills and where do I want to be, the lifestyle I want to live. You know, more and more part-time working is coming up as well, all these different things, and to some of it is also the culture of the organization you want to be. So it's so personal as to what sector you're in, what type of work, because we know that finance and banking is modest, but finance is quite broad, right, in terms of what area or business you're working in. So find the type of culture of the organization you want to be in is important. And to Ranji's point earlier, that honesty when you're speaking to a potential employer is really important, because it can go both ways. You could either see that they're really for it or they're not, and it makes the decision for you much easier as to, do you want to be part of that organization? Do you want to work with people like that or not? So you shouldn't be lucky to have you is important. And I, to Dummer's point of recognizing, knowing your worth, I think is the key. But everyone's journey as to where they want to be, and research of what type of skills there are. So, you know, I'm at a conference last week, I was just for a separate discussion. I was talking to the CTO of Goldman Sachs, and we're talking about generative AI, and you know, they put out a report about 350,000 jobs will no longer exist in X many years because of AI. But it's not the case that with any role or jobs that those job specs and those job descriptions won't exist, but there'll be 400,000 new jobs that come up that are created as a result of it. So I think it's more about your look at adaptability and aptitude to move and evolve with things that are not in our control. So in the same way that weather's not in our control, climate change is not in our control, to think that we have a choice about it is about your ability to want to evolve how things go, I think, is my personal view about approaching things.
I'd echo that completely. I think for me, although I seem like I've been static in a single organization, actually this organization mutates every day. So there's been a lot of mergers and there's been a lot of activity in this bank. And what I've found is, I mean, I started with I'm jumping into a big bad investment bank. My dad said to me, do you know what you're doing? You're leaving blue chip Pricewaterhouse and you're jumping into an American bank. This is going to end in tears. And I was like, you know what? I've given them an honest conversation around, I want flexibility. I'll come in. By the way, I trailblazed flexible working at JP Morgan, sold it to them in my interview. So I keep to that one. But I think the 5-year career plan, 5-year, 3-year, 10-year, it's about being interested and motivated, because when you're at work, you don't want to be twiddling your thumbs and putting on weight, eating cream cakes. I did that for a short period in 10 months at one point, and I was like, no, never again. So you have, where you are, you've got to enjoy that. But when you're looking forward, it is that holistic picture. You know, what do you want to do next? Where do you want to be? And it's not measured in how high up you are in the tree. It's the quality of life that you're going to get. What do you want to do with what you're doing? So I think for me, it was always, yes, okay, if I do become, head of EMEA, I go and deal with, satellite issue in Frankfurt, or actually I'm going to be doing 12 trips to New York if I take this project on, but look where it'll take the function I'm doing. So I do a lot of work around the technology infrastructure, things that you wouldn't normally associate with boring, nerdy tax, but nothing is boring in tax. I mean, the amount of stuff that we get into. So I think about interest, think about what do you enjoy, because you should enjoy your life, enjoy the kind of work, and then your 5-year plan should be, well, where does that take me? So whatever field you're interested in. Personal time, what does your overall life look like? So your 5-year plan should be, I want to be in X space, I'd like to have these kind of people around me, I'd like to have time to do XYZ activities. So you should have the plan balanced, work and life. And then I think it's a rolling plan. So keep revisiting it, because nothing's ever fixed in life. So don't close your mind to opportunities. I mean, if anybody had ever told me that I'd accept the most challenging role at age 60, would you believe that's what I did? I was getting ready to hang up. I was having that conversation with my manager to say, I'm done. What's a good transition time? And she was actually, we were thinking, please keep on the global interact, but we need the head of EMEA now. And can you do that? I went home and I said, no. I don't need this extension. But actually, it's been the best fun ride. I've had time to go in and learn stuff that I thought I would love to, but I didn't have time to. Great big team. It was scary, but I've really enjoyed it. So you can do it at any age. So, and then there's the whole other world, right? What else can you do? You know, you talked about Khalsa Edmund Raj. You know, I know each of us have met each other in forums that are nothing to do with our actual careers, but we take the skill set of what we've learned in these careers, and then we find other things to do and make a nuisance of ourselves elsewhere, but hopefully adding value. So I think the 5-year plan has to be very much holistic, and what are you going to be able to give back into society should be part of that, because it just grows you as an individual.
So I think this whole have a 5-year plan, have a 10-year plan is a myth, right? I think the world is moving too fast, right? And whatever you think you're going to do in 5 years, you won't. There'll be some kind of intervention. And when you think about what the world was like 5 years ago and where we are with AI and so forth, it's changed. It's changed so much, right? So don't worry if you don't have a 5-year plan. If you can only see 12 months or 24 months ahead, that's the horizon you have. That's absolutely fine as well. For me, I'd be very surprised if I was still in the bank in 5 years' time. You know, I'm not saying I won't be, but to me, I've never chased money, right? So that's never been my primary objective in any role that I've done. I always think that if you do the right thing, the money will find you itself. You know, it's the way life works. What I'd like to do in 5 years, if it works, is I mentioned the career event that I run. You know, I call it the Student Career Compass, and I've got some of the largest UK organisations participating, and I've got a queue of others who want to join, but it's not big enough for them to join in yet. So I think I'd like to try and scale that and build that into something that maybe I can support. You know, 20, 30, 40,000 students, 50,000 students. To be honest, I'm not even fussed about monetizing it. You know, I've had conversations with a bank where they might sponsor it, depending on how far I take it. You know, I'm thinking about lifting that model and taking it to India as well. So I've got plans in my head, and I'll give it my best. And if they bear fruition, fantastic. If they don't, then there'll be something else. There always will be.
You're on mute,
You're on mute, Richard.
Sorry. No, I was going to say about your 5-year plan and not being working in the bank. I'm sure you said that 5 years ago, but no. The point I was going to make was I think, you know, as we should always be learning, no matter where we are in our career, and developing. And great example from Paramjeet, and as Sikh means learner as well. So, you know, from a faith perspective, that ties in really neatly as well. Thank you for your inputs. Manraj, have we got any more questions on?
There's actually quite a few. There's about 15 questions in the chat, and what I'm thinking, just looking at time, we'll take them away. We'll send the email out to the panelists, see if we can get a written response from them, and then post them on sort of social media, because I'm just cautious of time and people dropping off. But a lot of people are putting good questions in there. Amrit, Paramjeet, Manraj, I don't know if you see any questions in the chat that you think you can answer in a quick few seconds, 30 seconds or so, or more than happy to sort of wrap it up now. But if you can see any questions in there that you want to answer now, I'm more than happy for you to take those before I wrap it up.
I think there was a question around communication and whether there's a need to adapt to a more corporate style. I think, oh dear, I probably did sound very corporate when I speak, and that's probably become a habit. Communication is actually a critical skill for all of us, and each one of us finds our own style. I love talking. My parents always said, "Chupni karti hai," you know. So I've always talked. But I think, as I said before, you have to listen and then respond. And I think you adapt your style based on where you are, but it is actually really important to be able to get your point across. So I suppose that was something that I did pick up. Haven't had any formal training around it, except the bashing you get when you don't do a good pitch into your clients. And of course, working in this organization, I'm usually pitching something nobody wants to hear. So because I'm a risk manager, so when I'm telling people you really shouldn't do this, they don't want to hear you, so you have to find a way to reach them. So I suppose that's the kind of training that I've had. So it works with the mother-in-law too, and the daughter.
Just on that communication point, when I first came down to London, in the very first few weeks, I got sent on a course called Effective Communication Skills, where they video you presenting, then they teach techniques and they video you again. I remember the guy coming up to me saying, "You trying to hide your accent?" I went, "Yeah, kind of, because it's a Yorkshire accent, it's quite strong." And he said, No, don't hide it. That's what makes you you. And sometimes I get even more Yorkshire. So, corporate speak is fine, but don't lose your identity, because it's what makes you stick out, and stand out as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing I got told by a female partner at Pricewaterhouse, I never realized I did this, but every time I knocked on her door to go in to get something cleared, apparently it was a very difficult knock and my head was always tilted. And I always asked the question, is it okay to come in? And she made me do that again and again. She said, do you realize how subservient you look and sound? What's the problem? I said, come in. You don't realize you're doing it, but I was. And that's a lesson that stayed with me.
Amazing. No, good. Look, the rest of the questions, we'll answer them offline, and we'll definitely post them on LinkedIn and our other social platforms. Just want to say thank you to everyone, Paramjit, Amrit, Manraj, Jajad, Taran, who's not on this call, and all the attendees for your time and taking it out to join. Please do sort of stay in touch with us on our social media handles. We have got future events lined up, potentially a part 2 to this as well, depending on the feedback I get from Amrit, Paramjit, and Manraj. But a lot of attendees do want to hear from you again, so thank you for that. Just before we end, Jajad has created a survey. I don't know how it works on Zoom, but if you could all answer that, that would really help us for future events and what to expect from us going forward. Is that right, Jajad?
Yeah, I think as soon as we end the call, or you come off the call, you'll get a link to answer a few questions. It'll take you a few minutes. That feedback would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Cool, excellent. Sorry for going 1 minute over time, guys, but look, enjoy the rest of your days and hopefully we can all meet up soon. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.